Spider Boss, incoming.
I don't know if I appreciate your attitude right. Oh, no, you said that. No, you're fine.
Has anybody seen Underwater?
Underwater?
Yeah, it's a new movie that came out. Apparently, the creature is Cthulhu.
Kristen Stewart.
Yeah.
Is it? The creature is really supposed to be Cthulhu?
Apparently.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. Now I'm interested.
No, I read it somewhere.
Interesting.
I just saw the name of the episode.
People have all been freaking out watching the Color Out of Space, Richard Stanley's Color Out of Space movie, and that he's been signed on to do Dunwich Horror next.
Yep. Yeah, I saw that.
Is it getting a wider release now?
What was that?
Is it getting a wider release or something? Why is it all of a sudden?
Well, they've released it now publicly to the theaters, so it's not just the Film Fest people that see it.
That's what a wider release would be. It was so good. Did you get to watch it during the Lovecraft Film Festival? Dude, it was...
I even went up to Richard Stanley himself and said I enjoyed his movie.
It was the movie that my wife, when she saw it, was like, okay, I get it now. Like, so good. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Worshipped, so they said, the great old ones who lived ages before there were any men, and who came to the young world out of the sky.
Alrighty, everyone, welcome to another episode of the Great Old Ones Gaming Podcast. Are we at a point where I start numbering the episodes, or do I just keep saying another one?
I don't know, is this the first one?
Until we get...
Where are we at?
We're actually on episode number 11
crap.
now.
Never mind, take that back.
Right? I am your host, Nate, lost in time and space, and today I'm joined with...
I'm Man from Ling, host of the Whisper in Darkness YouTube channel.
I'm Innkeeper Vase Odin of the Twisted Tentacle Inn.
I am Nathan of Arkham Horror Images of Madness on Instagram, and also international strudel competitor.
Strudel competitor? What?
Pretty sure I said it. Did I stutter? Did anyone hear me stutter?
No, I've never heard of a strudel
let's
competitor.
Continue. I don't want to really make a big deal about this. Not about me.
Side note, what's a strudel competitor?
Vase, could I talk to you for just a minute?
All right, so tonight's topics, we have a couple of quick mentions of the Call of Cthulhu RPG that I want to go over. Fantasy Flight announced the release of the Blob Ate Everything scenario. We also started getting merch for the Arkham Horror card game, and I think we're going to also take a dive into the preview article for Weaver of the Cosmos, along with having a quick chat about the recent board game Cthulhu, Death May Die. But as always, we want to thank the patrons of the show for their support, and a special shout out to worshippers Robert and our new patron of the show, hailing all the way from Finland, Jussi. And I'm not even going to attempt your surname for the fear of sounding like deep.
Jussi, I see it. I see it. That's a great name.
But yeah, so what you guys been up to lately?
Nathan and I got to hang out the other day.
And what kind of Arkham Madness did we play?
We didn't. We played Above and Below, which was so much fun. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit.
Well, I knew you were with the way you did all your voices for that Delta Green stream that you did.
Yeah, I love games like that are like storytelling and it, just randomly develops a story.
Hold on, just in case people are in the dark, let me prep them real quick with this. So, Ryan Lockett from Red Raven Studios did Above and Below, and he's also done several great ones, such as Near and Far, 8-Minute Empire, Rome, etc. He's done a lot. The new Sleeping Gods game coming out. that's a cooperative game against these gigantic Titan creatures. That's his game as well. But Above and Below is a game where you find yourself torn away from your homeland, so you have to find a new realm. So you travel the world, cross the ocean, find this great area to build, and then there's also caves down below. So it's a combination of a worker placement game coupled with an adventure, choose your own adventure game down below. Fantastic art, great gameplay, great replayability. Comes with a big spiral-bound book of lots of adventures, and then there's also some expansions for it. So with Vase's love of both talking, I suffer from that malady as well as just enjoyment for good games. I knew he'd enjoy it the other day when we got together for a game day, so I introduced him to that.
And there's a lot of strategic decision making that's subtle, but it does impact what every decision you make does impact what happens later, which is really cool. It was fun. But still haven't had a chance to play Arkham since before the holidays, I think.
And I'm going to make sure you don't again because you're annoying me. What's kind of funny is right before we started, and Nate took I want to say 3 seconds to prep himself to start the episode, to get into that professional voice. It's the same pause and intake you would do right before you try to eat the last bite of something that you're just trying to finish off. It was just like a pause, focus, intake of breath, launch at the attack. It was great.
Thank you. What about you, Cameron? What have you been up to recently?
I've been playing a lot of Jenny Barnes. Ran her through the Witching Hour a half dozen times, testing out various builds. Had my stream with Tim Fiscus last weekend. We played Union and Disillusion, which I had bounced off of in single player and did not like, but we played it in 2-player and it was much better, and we actually managed to beat it, so that was nice. Ran a Call of Cthulhu game for my Thursday D&D group, and they quite enjoyed it. First time I've GM'd Cthulhu in a long time, and the first time with the new 7th edition rules, so that was good. And I was looking into the Silent Legions RPG, which is by Kevin Crawford of Stars Without Number fame. Sort of a sandboxy horror role-playing game that uses the original D&D OSR rules, and then borrows the Stars Without Numbers faction turns, so you can basically run a sandbox campaign.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was actually looking into that fairly recently. They had mentioned it on the Miskatonic University podcast, which is mostly just about the Call of Cthulhu RPG, but I forget who they were interviewing, but he had mentioned doing a D&D style game with Silent Legions, so I was curious to check that out too.
Yeah, I've read through the Stars Without Number faction, its world building and faction turns and whatnot, and it's quite interesting. I'd like to see what Silent Legions does with it. Might be useful for creating Call of Cthulhu campaigns and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Especially campaigns where you don't necessarily want a mystery to solve. Like if you're looking for a more organic experience, that might be something worth checking out. Because Delta Green and Call of Cthulhu and games inspired off those systems, they tend to the scenarios tend to be structured in a particular way. Whereas you're essentially breadcrumbing your players from scenario to scenario.
Yeah, that's one of my the things I dislike about Call of Cthulhu is that I find a lot of the scenarios are not particularly well written, and they seem to require a lot of work to sort of mold into something that's playable. So I'm wondering whether a sandbox approach might be a little bit better, where you, and that's sort of the approach that I've used in past Call of Cthulhu games, where I just sort of throw out a bunch of leads and let the investigators pick and choose which ones they want to pursue.
But how'd your game go overall, you would say?
Oh, it went all right. I mean, there were a few rules mistakes here and there, but that's to be expected the first time you're running a new system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
But they seem to enjoy it, so that's always a plus.
Yep, definitely.
And looking forward to playing some more Arkham. Still need to play some of the more recent scenarios, but I have been trying to play some more rogue investigators because I feel like I've got a bit of a blind spot when it comes to what rogues are doing lately. So playing Jenny was very instructive.
What about the rogue class do you feel blindsided by recently?
It's more that I just haven't played them. I don't play them consistently. Like I tend to play Mystics a lot lately, and then I tend to play, probably after that I'd play Survivors, then Guardians, and then Seekers, and Rogues I just haven't been playing, where I used to play them quite a bit. And so I just wanted to get reacquainted with them, and then try out some of the new cards that have been released to see how they do. I was playing a Jenny Barnes Succeed by 2 build that looked good on paper, but didn't perform particularly well, at least against the Witching Hour. It seemed to have just far too many moving parts to get working on in time. But then I played a different build that I believe it was built by Matt88 that was using the Scroll of Prophecies from the Search for Kadath. That performed much better. So
Curious to check that out.
yeah, and it also played Moonstone, which was one of the cards from Dark Side of the Moon that I wanted to test out.
Yeah, Moonstone's definitely an interesting card that we can probably get into in more detail later in the show. But Nathan, what have you been up to?
I've really been continuing my exploration and pimping out of, for lack of a better word, Fantasy Flight's LCG line. So I've been working with Lord of the Rings more. I talked to the people at FFG, and for some reason they had blacked out part of the sections of the rule sheets for each of the scenarios, and I think it always seemed to happen during that last part, which was the before you read this section. And I don't know if it was because it was in a slightly different color, because they had like a red text they changed to, or if it was a formatting, or if somebody made the conscious decision to black that part out. I don't know, but it was black. Half of them are blacked out, and they have been restored so you can read the whole thing, which is really cool because I want to print out I want to make a book of all of the pages for that, because there is some fun storyline in there and stuff. So I have a vision to print it out on high quality paper, put it in kind of a green leather book with some gold stamp, and make that kind of a neat talking piece, shelf piece, but also something useful for the game.
Yeah, it sounds like something you would do.
Shut up. And then, of course, I've been working with Marvel Champions. By the same token, people have come out with a lot of great stuff recently, including some really awesome acrylic like cityscapes for the villain, and neat hero boards that mark when you've used your power. And they've also come out with special tokens for Hawkeye And for Green Goblin, I think there's like Madness. I can't remember the exact terms, but the two types of tokens that you use for the Green Goblin, they've made those dual-sided. So that's fantastic. Always great work. Really excited to get those and show them off. And then, of course, for Arkham itself, I just finally recently broke into the Dreamlands, of course, behind a lot of other people in the podcast community. And I've really enjoyed the Waking World and the Dream World scenarios and the way they've built them. I mean, I sat down going, okay, is this just all in my head? Am I just drinking the Arkham Kool-Aid and playing anything they put out, or do I genuinely really enjoy it? And I sat down and played the first two in the Dream Eaters box. I was like, holy crap, that was so much fun. So, yeah, when you have that visceral reaction, you know you're onto something. And then just last night, I played Kingdom Death Monster, which is great. As always, people died, which is the whole point. And showed Marvel Champions to some new people. So, yep, that's what I've been up to.
Very cool. I guess as for me, I've just been streaming a bunch of Arkham lately. Started a solo Akachi campaign through the Circle Undone. That's been a nightmare, for lack of a better term.
It's weird. Arkham Horror, are you thinking of the right game?
So Akachi hasn't been doing very well?
Oh, dude, no. I've been getting slapped. It's been brutal, man.
So, your wife aside, how's Arkham going? Have you been enjoying yourself? What's been new?
It's the classic problem that mystics have, where you spend like half the scenario just trying to get the assets you need into play, and then you run out of time. And it's just, one scenario was I couldn't get shriveling out fast enough to kill enemies, so I just like floundered around and died. And then the other scenario, I couldn't get a means of investigating quick enough, so I just couldn't get clues fast enough and then died. And then played Secret Name, and Secret Name is just a whole different beast in and of itself. So so that's not going as well as I think most people has anticipated. And then other than that, I finished up the campaign of Path to Carcosa with Pete for the League, and I won't spoil how the ending goes, but needless to say, the Big H Daddy...
Did you just say Big H Daddy?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I can't say his name.
Pete starts with a P. Duke starts with a D. H Daddy.
Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. The unspeakable one. As crickets chirp. Anyway, other than that, yeah, I played another couple of hours of Moons of Madness until that game decides that it randomly wants to crash.
That's too bad, because it was really cool. Like watching you play that game it had the right like feel, like that really creepy, where it's not a bunch of creatures just running at you, but the crashing, and you have a brand new computer that can handle these kind of things, so the game itself can't handle itself or something, right?
Yeah, it's basically like the way the game renders stuff. It basically like renders everything in the map all at once, so it like causes a huge like load on your CPU, and it shouldn't. So it's annoying to deal with, but
Did you just say it takes a shit on your CPU?
Pretty much, yeah. It's really obnoxious, and I don't think there's any means that I can do to fix it. So it is what it is. And but yeah, as you said, Vase, it's cool. Like the environment is, the tone is perfect. Like it has that weird, creepy, like droning noise in the background, and you're not like mobbed with like references of H.P. Lovecraft work. It's the hinting of the mythos is much more subtle, despite the name being an obvious homage. But But yeah, that's what I've been up to recently. Why don't we go ahead and dive into tonight's topics? And why don't we go ahead and I'll just start off by rattling off some recent Call of Cthulhu news that's gone on. Last Friday, they announced a new Call of Cthulhu campaign that they're going to be streaming on their Twitch channel, the Dead of Winter. To quote the website here, The Dead of Winter is an epic story of intrigue, love, and horror set in 1929 across London and Russia. The strange reappearance of people long gone from the investigators' lives precedes the arrival of two curious letters, both asking for help from unexpected sources. The investigators are drawn into a series of events taking them far from home into the unfamiliar and potentially dangerous landscape of Soviet Russia, where friends may be enemies and enemies may be friends. So that's kind of neat. It's authored by Tim Weissman, who's a pretty prominent creator within the Cthulhu mythos. He authored the Tatters of the King campaign, which is I think it was a 6th edition. Yeah, it was a King in Yellow campaign for 6th edition Call of Cthulhu. So that'll be neat to see. I'm curious to watch that. That starts February 4th at 8 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. So that'll be great for listeners of the podcast that live across the pond. And in other Call of Cthulhu news, the Gateways to Terror, 3 Evenings of Nightmare scenario pack was recently released in PDF form. The Gateways to Terror contains 3 short play scenarios for 7th edition Call of Cthulhu, which is ideal for beginner players. Originally, the 3 scenarios were designed as a demonstration to give the games... they were designed as demonstration games to give a taste of the game's motifs and mystery, investigation, and horror for shorter playtimes. And as for the scenarios themselves, there's the Necropolis, which is set in Egypt. So the investigators are sent to investigate a recently discovered tomb deep within the Valley of the Kings. After strange events of Tutankhamun's tomb being opening, what's in the cellar feels like a recreation of The Haunting, where a businessman is supposedly guilty of committing a brutal murder of his beloved wife in their family's ancestral holiday cabin, which pretty much feels like straight out of The Haunting. And then The Dead Border is basically your quiet neighbor is secretly a cultist. So there's some neat stuff here, especially for beginner players. This is seems like a great way to get a game of Call of Cthulhu in within like 2 hours or so, as the scenario premises are pretty basic on their own front.
It's pretty neat, and it comes with pre-made characters that people can just jump in with. That's really cool.
Yep. Yeah, and as always, too, with what's cool about Chaosium is that if you buy the PDFs on their website, they give you a code for a discount when it comes into print. So that's always kind of neat.
Oh, that's nice of them.
So you essentially get like $10 off the book, essentially, which is cool.
Kind of like how Arc Dream does their stuff. Like if you buy an Arc Dream product, you get the PDF for free.
Yeah, really cool. Yeah, it's a similar concept, so that's cool.
Speaking of Call of Cthulhu, we've been playing a Call of Cthulhu campaign.
We have, yep. I've been running the Flotsam and Jetsam campaign, which is the organized play campaign from the Cult of Chaos, which is Chaosium's group of volunteer GMs, and that's been a lot of fun. We've played, I think, 4 sessions now as of recording this episode.
Yeah, and we won't give away how many people have died, but people have died. People have died. But we've had a nice cast of colorful characters. I can't wait till those episodes come out.
Yeah. But without going too much into spoilers, Vase, what did you think about Call of Cthulhu? Because this is your first foray into it, right?
Yeah, definitely. It feels like a different game than Delta Green, even though the mechanics are almost identical. Between the setting and then some of the from what I've experienced, the scenarios, the way they're structured is slightly different. I feel like it's more action adventure, and with the horror elements, you don't get as much in terms of like the type of I don't want to say pulp, because it's not as pulpy as say Arkham, but it's like in between. I would say it's between the pulpiness of Arkham and the super seriousness of Delta Green.
Well, like, are you saying like home style pulpy, or like how pulpy are we talking?
Home style pulpy.
Yeah, you know, like home style orange juice, like that pulpy.
I mean, it's not Grove Stand, if that's what you're asking, Nathan.
Yeah. No, but it's but Call of Cthulhu was so far really fun. I'm excited. I feel like you have more options for characters than Delta Green. It's Delta Green, you're pretty much going to be a government agent. And yeah, you can have side hobbies and stuff for your characters, but with Call of Cthulhu, it's pretty much you can be anything. Your career can be anything that was around during the 1920s and 1930s. So you can have, like, I was playing a zookeeper, or not a zookeeper, I was a circus animal trainer. And
Yeah.
and you know, someone could be a reporter and someone else is like a fortune teller. So that's the kind of thing that generally you don't have in a Delta Green game. So it gives you a few more options to really add more flavor to your characters, even though they might die pretty quickly. Like, they can still make an impact with not just their career, but you can give them, I feel like, a little bit more personality, or it's easier to come up with a personality for the characters. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. The storytelling aspects were really cool, and the chase scene was really intense. I really enjoyed the car chase scenes, so that was fun too.
Yeah, I think Call of Cthulhu does those scenes particularly the best out of a lot of the other investigative RPGs that I've played. But as you kind of mentioned, Face, the benefit of Call of Cthulhu is that you have a lot of diverse character creation options, but as the keeper, that is a nightmare to deal with.
I can totally see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had that in the Call of Cthulhu campaign, or the game I ran. We had an author and an athlete, and so it was required a little bit of mental gymnastics to figure out why they would be together and why they would be doing this particular scenario. And just coming from having played a lot of D&D lately, and I had forgotten how lethal Call of Cthulhu combat can be, and combats tend to be resolved in a couple of dice rolls as opposed to D&D, where they can drag on for half hour, 45 minutes to an hour, depending on what you're fighting.
Yeah, narration-wise, like, when someone dies, now you have a new character that's jumping into the group, and, like, how did they get there? And I think some of the designers of Delta Green said that was the catalyst for creating Delta Green, was if you're all government agents, then there's always a reason why you all came together. So, yeah, I can understand, like, from both perspectives, the benefits and drawbacks of each one.
Yeah, and a part of it is your player group too. Like, if you feel willing, if you feel like you can tell your players, like, no, you should probably play reporters if you're going to be, part of Strange But True, or, you should probably play, you should probably play PIs and federal agents if you're going to be, doing these particular scenarios. And the scenarios themselves actually kind of suggest careers that the investigators build around. So it's kind of, I feel like it's kind of dependent on that too. But yeah, so that's been a lot of fun. Call of Cthulhu is definitely fun for those, like, those moments of, like, the investigator saved the world from the mythos.
Just from a retail perspective, it's interesting because I've got people that come up to me, kind of like what Man from Lang said, but people come up to me and they're like, I think we're doing Call of Cthulhu wrong because, like, in my D&D campaign, blah, 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 but I just got my ass handed to me in the first adventure, and we're only level 1, and I'm like, yeah, so what you have to understand is that everything wants to kill you and also doesn't care about you in Call of Cthulhu. So, yeah. That and there's no bards, so it's kind of better.
Well, I think some of the scenarios can be kind of tricky as well, because I know I was looking at one and it said the lethality of this scenario is very low, but then you read the scenario and it's just like one of the encounters is a bear, which a bear can pretty much tear up any investigator, and then one of the other encounters is a guy with a rifle who can pretty much one-shot anybody in the party. So it was just like, what do you mean this is not lethal?
Yeah, and it's like with investigative games, there's so many things that, you know, when you sit down and write those or prep for an adventure, there's so many things that your players are going to think of that you're never going to account for. So yeah, like you said, man, there's a lot of mental gymnastics that you kind of have to go through sometimes to get the players where they need to be.
Also, I think the hardest part is for people who play D&D or other games. I mean, even playing Arkham Horror, the card game, you're used to fighting everything, you know? And in these types of games, it's hard to transition into them and realize that running away is usually the best option, and finding ways to avoid combats are usually the best ways to go about it. It's not really meant to be a combat intensive type of experience.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's the recent happenings of the Call of Cthulhu RPG. I do plan on eventually editing and releasing the episodes of the Flotsam and Jetsam campaign. When I get to it is when I get to it. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on to other news here. What first of the Arkham Files do you guys want to discuss here? FFG did release a kind of a quick little blurb about the blob that ate everything, and they basically just said that this is supposed to come out in, quote, just a few months. So I guess we'll see Blob hitting shelves at some point. I'm assuming probably this summer, probably after the Dream Eaters is done.
It would make sense.
Because I think they did a similar thing with Guardians of the Abyss, right? Or no, that was released in like January.
Yeah, there was something else. They do tend to plan them pretty well in relation to the cycles.
And it's likely that we'll probably see Return to the Forgotten Age at some point this year too. And at least last year they announced Return to Carcosa in April, I want to say. So I would expect to see an announcement for Return to Forgotten Age the next couple of months too.
I'm really excited for Return to the Forgotten Age.
Yeah, and then kind of they didn't really announce it on their website, but on their Twitter they mentioned that FFG teamed up with Hot Topic, of all things, to start selling T-shirts for their notable game lines, including Arkham Horror.
Matt the Bastard linked that on Facebook, and I immediately showed him what was up by ordering some.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
I guess that doesn't really make sense. Never mind.
I mean, it's a black T-shirt. Like,
they have black?
Right? I could barely handle it. But so now a whole new generation of angsty teenagers are being introduced to H.P. Lovecraft and the mythos.
Nice shirt. What? I thought it was a pentagram. What is this? Elder sign. I'm not an elder. I'm cool.
We also had the announcement of Blood of Balshandor as well with the new investigator.
Yep, with Dexter Drake, which we did kind of talk about with Matt on our last episode.
Yeah, who was that guy? I know he was on the show, and I know we like to interview people that make content, but was he a writer for Call of Cthulhu? Or?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I think he worked with Steve Jackson to make Cthulhu Munchkin.
Wow.
Cthulhu Munchkin.
Like, there's making jokes, and then there's like crossing the line. Okay, you just crossed the
line. Real quick, what type of shirts do they have for this shirt line? Sorry to go back.
They're just T-shirts, yeah. They're just regular T-shirts.
What images do they have? Just like the generic Arkham images that they
I'd go check it out.
I want the Spider Mouth guy T-shirt.
They don't have that.
Yeah, they don't have hot block nachos, unfortunately.
bad.
I know. I agree with you.
So about nachos, what did you just say?
Nachos, yeah.
Okay, I want nachos.
Yeah, you know, the spider boss.
What time is it? It's 7:52 in the morning. I want nachos.
Breakfast nachos are a thing, I'm pretty sure.
Sure.
Okay.
Somewhere.
Keep it up.
Whatever.
Well, he is a chef or sous chef, so he would know.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, see?
Yeah, sure.
Wherever-
You put some, like, eggs and some chorizo and some cheese. Boom.
Chorizo.
Breakfast nachos.
I love the way you guys say chorizo. It's chorizo. But it's funny because when I lived in Florida,
Wow,
we have
okay.
this restaurant called Pollo Tropical, which is like tropical chicken is the translation. And we would laugh. We'd be like, how do Americans pronounce that? Polo Tropical? Oh, man.
That's how people from New Hampshire would pronounce it.
Chorizo.
Whatever. I get made fun of all the time for the way I say foreign words. It's not out of the expectation at this point. But moving back into our main topics, Weaver of the Cosmos. That's a thing. That's a thing that they announced. The spider boss is in fact incoming.
Super cool.
So yeah, what do you guys think of the idea of Atlaknacha taking several encounter cards to represent?
Well, I think it's great.
Yeah.
I love Matt's story from our interview with him, where he was like running around with his doodle that he did, saying like, "Check this out." I think there should be a special deluxe edition or a special way that we can get his exact drawing, because I want to
awesome.
play with that. That is my new that's my new goal in life.
Matt, if you're listening, make that happen. We want like Arkham Knights promos of the Atlaknacha encounter cards.
The modular boss thing is such a cool idea. I really, I was flabbergasted when I saw the announcement for it. I'm like, wow, that is something. Why didn't anyone come up with it before? Super cool. And so I incorporated that mechanic into a D&D game, and my players loved it in D&D. Just having like a boss where they have to, kill different parts of them. So it is a mechanic that I can't wait to try out and play against.
Yeah, it has very classic like JRPG feel to it almost. Like I'm sure
Yeah, video gaming, yep.
Yeah, like I'm sure Matt had some like Final Fantasy influence on this. It feels like those bosses where you have to like bash the legs in first to get at the core of the enemy, and then you attack the core and then do it all over again.
Yeah.
But yeah, to kind of speaking of the legs of Atlaknacha, let me pull up the card here real quick and let's give this a quick read. So this is a X 3 health per investigator, 3 evade enemy. It has the Ancient One, Spider, and Elite traits. It is massive. Damn. This enemy cannot make attacks of opportunity, so that's nice. X is the shroud value of the enemy's location, and then it has a force effect that says, when you would evade this enemy, instead of exhausting it, choose an investigator at your location. This enemy cannot attack the chosen investigator this round. And it has a victory point, and it deals a health and a sanity of damage. So this is pretty interesting. I like the idea of evading a massive enemy and like basically like using yourself as a decoy in multiplayer. That's a neat way to use the evade mechanic with massive enemies.
Yeah, it's
I
like
think
you're distracting it for someone else to get away. It's cool.
Like, hey, over here. And then what's cool about that too is that they did as Matt said in our previous interview, is that they actually like did a special inverted version of the card template so that they could do the other legs, which is cool. But those also have the same game text. But looking at the actual act and agenda cards, it looks like there's going to be a decent amount of Doom accumulation cards. The agenda gets +2 Doom threshold per investigator, and you don't remove Doom from locations in play. So I think it's pretty safe to say that we're gonna have cards that add Doom to the board.
Yeah, that's usually an indicator for sure.
Yeah.
Fun times.
I
Ancient Evils.
expect a lot of Ancient Evils gripes to be had in this scenario.
I think that they're probably going to do something similar to Ancient Evils. They've been experimenting with it with every Return to set, where they'll like do a different version of Ancient Evils, and I have a feeling in the actual new sets they're going to start doing the same thing. Instead of just saying, "Oh, at that end, just create their own version of it."
Yeah, it's also basically a free card design space in the Return to sets. So that's a thing to consider too.
True.
But yeah, and then moving on to the Act deck, it has this kind of similar location thing to Pallid Mask, or if you've played Thousand Shapes before, a portion of that scenario as well. And it reads, each location is connected to each location above and below it, and then the objective for the investigators is if each investigator is at the bottommost location, they spend the requisite number of clues, which is 3 per investigator. So yeah, it looks like we're going to be walking around a great web, hopefully getting to the bottom of this. There was a joke to be made there. I'm surprised Nathan didn't laugh, but it's fine.
He only laughs at his own jokes.
Oh, right, that's right.
Son of a bitch.
And Man from Lang laughs at all the jokes.
At least one of them.
One.
Once again, I think he was laughing more at the sheer situation. I kind of feel something doesn't feel right. I don't know. Can't put my finger on it.
Can't put my finger on it. Anyway.
God, some Ween references. That's what we need.
Yeah, right? Yep. That's a great band,
They
by the
really
way.
are. Chocolate and Cheese,
Yep.
great album.
Yes. But yeah, so why don't we go ahead and move on to the player cards that were announced in this article. Vase, do you want to read the Eye of Truth?
I shall read the Eye of Truth in 3, 2, here we go. Eye of Truth, it is a Seeker skill card, 5 experience pips, very expensive to purchase. It has 4 wild icons, and the spell and practiced traits. So it's a spell, so that means that, is it Marie that can use it? And it says, if this skill test is on a treachery and the test is successful, add that treachery to the victory display and attach the Eye of Truth to it. While attached, the Eye of Truth contributes its skill icons to all tests on copies of the attached treachery. It's always watching you. So basically, you committed to a skill test on a treachery, and then you set that treachery aside and put this on it. And then anytime you pull that treachery for the rest of the game, you add those 4 wild icons to your skill test against that treachery.
Seems sweet in multiplayer. I'm skeptical about it in solo play.
It's definitely powerful, but it's extremely scenario dependent. So scenarios with treacheries that have difficult skill tests, and there's 4 copies of that treachery in the deck, and the deck gets reshuffled a lot of times throughout the scenario, those are going to be the best ones. But there are some scenarios where you don't reshuffle the encounter deck that much, or you do it once, and maybe they'll have a tough treachery that only has 2 copies in there. That's going to be, a dud card, I think. I mean, I guess you'll still commit it to the first time that you do it, but 5 experience points for 4 wild icons seems a little expensive if you're just going to use it for that. So getting the most of it is going to, first of all, require you to really know your scenario. So going in blind, I don't think that card is going to be very useful. But going into a scenario that you're very familiar with the encounter deck, I think it would be a much better choice for a card.
Yeah, I would agree. It seems pretty good in the Circle Undone campaign, where not only is the encounter deck being reshuffled multiple times throughout the course of a scenario sometimes, but those hexes are just so irritating. So having one of these on like a Bedeviled or a Racked or something seems really good, especially for...
Yes.
Yeah. So I imagine it's good in scenarios like that. It also has really good traits. The spell trait is really handy to have. You can, combo it with something like Arcane Initiate or...
Diane Esperance.
What's the other card I'm thinking of? Yeah, Diane Esperance. I don't know if you'd want to use it with Diana, but...
Why not?
I think Diana's also...
Well, how would that work? Because you have to attach the card. So you're playing a copy...
I think Diana says specifically event. Man from Lang, is that correct?
Okay.
Yes, I believe it is an event.
Well, that answers that question.
Yeah. So, but I mean, yeah, it's a target for Arcane Initiate. I think there's a couple of other cards that interact with spells as well. But the practice trait is also a thing that's now recently become of relevance due to the spoiler card that you revealed, Man from Lang. The practice makes perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It does work with practice makes perfect. I think this is one of the few, if only, cards that will let you remove a card from the encounter deck, which is interesting. I agree that I think it's probably a lot better in multiplayer, where you're going to encounter, if you've got, say, 3 copies of Rotting Remains cycling through the deck and you remove one of them, chances are you're going to encounter the other 2 if you're reshuffling quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely.
But you've got to hold on to this until you hit the treachery you want.
And you still have to pass the treachery too. That's the other thing. Like drawing a tentacle.
Yeah, and you've got to be at the same, like if you're in multiplayer, you've got to be at the same location as the person taking the treachery. So it's not it's certainly not fire and forget. You need to do a little bit of work to get it to fire off. And again, I mean, there's always the chance of drawing an auto fail and it all for being for naught in the end. But the ability to remove a powerful, like if there's a scenario that has one particular treachery that's really gonna hurt you, then this might be worth including just to deal with that.
I agree 100%, and I think it's also fun from a design aspect that they make you look forward to a nasty treachery. You're like, come on, the one that I would normally never say. I hope this one pops up. And then I think what's funny is you're going to get in that mindset where you're kind of hyper focused on that, or focused more than you should be, because you've got that card in your hand and other things are going south on you, and you're like, yeah, whatever, I'm going to do this thing. So anyway, I think it's
that's a good point, Nathan. Yeah, it sometimes, like, you might just want to commit this to a test that you need 4 icons on. Like at what point with this card do you get greedy and hold it in your hand to hope to cancel a treachery for the rest of the game, or do you just use it when you need it?
Yeah, I think that depends a lot on who you're playing with in multiplayer. I mean, if you're playing with a mystic who can basically just out willpower pretty much any of those treacheries, it's not going to be quite as helpful.
Yeah, so you're probably using this with like your Guardian or something like that. Like if you're a seeker like Daisy or Mandy or something like that, you're probably pairing this with someone that can fight but doesn't have a good willpower or something like that.
Yeah, and I tend to find the treacheries in this game having played some of the Lord of the Rings LCG where there are some extremely punishing treacheries in that game. Having something like this to remove them is very handy, whereas in this game I find that a lot of the treacheries aren't quite as punishing. So if you've got, like, even if you have to eat 1 Rotting Remains a game, you're usually still okay. And then if you have enough willpower, it basically becomes, it's almost as though the encounter deck is whiffing because you're able to pass that test easily enough. I was trying to think of a treachery that I would be like, man, I really wish I could get rid of this. And something like maybe Entombed from the Forgotten Age would qualify. Be just like, yeah, okay, I'm going to definitely get rid of this Entomb because that is punishing to a lot of different investigators, and you can get easily, and that's one of those treacheries that if it hits at the wrong time and then you draw a couple enemies, you can be in a lot of trouble very quickly.
Isn't there one, and I could be wrong, that accelerates the doom, like ancient something?
You mean that Ancient Evils?
Yeah, I just wanted you to say it. That card sucks.
Yeah, but you can't use that. You can't use this on
I know.
that because it needs to be
No,
a
I
skill
know.
test.
I realized that, and I just thought to myself, what's a card I don't want to see anymore? Oh, yeah, that one, but not going to happen.
So Nathan, are you going to be spamming Drawn to the Flame nonstop now that you have this? Because you said you're going to be looking forward to the encounter deck cards.
Yeah.
Give it to me, give it to me. Give it to me.
Bring it. Yeah, good times.
I like that they're playing more with skill cards. I don't think that 5 experience points is the right amount. It is powerful, but it's so situational that I think the 5 experience points could have been lowered, maybe 2, 3, or 4. But I do like that they're adding more skill cards. I think we definitely needed more skill cards, and I like that they're playing with some of them, like All In, and this one, like way more powerful skill cards. And it's definitely nice to have that. But at the same time...
Hey, Vase, just sorry to interrupt, but you bring up a good point. Instead of spamming something like Drawn to the Flame, don't you think Delve Too Deep will actually be a little more...
Even better.
Slightly more viable with this?
Yeah, or both. Just on your turn,
Yeah.
2 Delve Too Deeps, 1 Drawn to the Flame. Give it to
Boom,
me.
who's your uncle?
Give it to me. Yeah. But yeah, I do like that they're playing more with skill cards. I do hope that they go for some mid-level skill cards too, and some more neutral ones that are more interesting. But it's a nice start, I think.
Yeah, we have seen a lot of level 1 skill cards come out over the past few Mythos packs, presumably to interact well with Mandy's deck building restrictions, and I guess to that extent Tony's as well. But speaking of Tony and speaking of rogue cards, well, the other card revealed in this article is the Sawed-Off Shotgun. Man from Link, do you want to read off the Sawed-Off Shotgun?
Sure. It's a 3-resource rogue asset that costs 5 experience points. It has combat and agility skill icons, the item, weapon, firearm, and illicit traits. It uses 2 ammo as an action. You can spend 1 ammo to fight. Instead of its standard damage, this attack deals 1 damage for each point you succeed by, to a minimum of 1 to a maximum of 6. If you fail and would damage another investigator, this attack deals 1 damage for each point you fail by, to a minimum of 1 to a maximum of 6, and it takes up a hand slot. So it has the shotgun ability from the Guardian card, but without any combat bonus. So if you are planning on succeeding by more than 6, you're going to have to find some other way to do that.
Mm. It's also interesting that the guy in the art is clearly holding the shotgun with 2 hands, yet it only takes up a hand slot. This is another art inconsistency with the card game, like Patrice's violin. But personal little nitpicks aside, yeah, this card is pretty interesting. Obviously, this is a pretty standard choice for Tony, I would say. But do you see an investigator like Jenny wanting to take something like this, Man from Ling?
I don't know. The card doesn't really. I think because it costs 5 experience points, and there's quite a few different weapons that are available at that 4 and 5 experience point level. And again, my blind spot with rogues coming through here, it's not a card that I would typically play with. But I think maybe you could do it in a Jenny build where you're using something like Hard Knocks and spending all of her resources to bump her skill test to a crazy amount. But I mean, to succeed by 6, you really need to be up by, on most scenarios, you probably need to be up by 8.
Yep.
If you want to hit consistently. So that's a lot of resources and or cards that you're committing from your hand in order to get it up that high. But certainly rogues can do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's as soon as you said that, it's not a card that I would insta go to for a Jenny deck, but I know for a fact that they will have decks Shotgun Jenny or some shit like that on Arkham DB, where it's just like, I want to build this deck with Sawed-Off Shotgun, and yep, there it is.
I mean, it does work with Sleight of Hand, which the other shotgun does not.
Oh, that's a good point. Yep.
So you can pop this into play with Sleight of Hand, fire off 2 shots, bring it back to your hand, and do it again.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Helpful.
You can also like use fence to make it cheaper. You can Finn has a card that lets him search for illicit cards, right? Am I remembering that
yes,
correctly?
I believe his smuggled goods does that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of pretty good options for getting into play or getting into play cheaper. But this card obviously screams Tony just because you also have access to extra ammunition, I believe, to put more ammo on the gun. Because two ammo is a pretty big hindrance to this card, I think.
Yeah, you're not going to get many shots out of it, so you'd have to play it with. I mean, there's also, I believe, when I was playing with Tim last week, he was using what's that card I hate? Contraband. He was using the higher level of contraband though to add ammo. So if you get contraband, you could start this with 4 ammo and go from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that seems pretty janky though. Contraband is like, I've only really ever played that in Leo Anderson with combination with the bar. But
yeah, I think he was playing it because he was playing the Crystallizer of Dreams, so he can stack it on there.
Okay. And yeah, like I didn't even think about sleight of hand with this card. That seems actually pretty cool. Yeah, what about other rogue investigators though? I don't really think other rogues are really interested in this card. Like Finn could take it, and he does have 3 combat, but
I think this is too many experience points for Finn, is it not? Finn is like level.
Oh, that's
4.
right. He's 0 to 3. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Finn can't even take this. That's right.
Well, no, I think he can because it's illicit, right? I think his deck building restrictions allow him to take it because it's illicit, but he can't.
He can't take it because it's a level 5 rogue card. Huh. Yeah, okay. So, but yeah, I don't, like, Preston can't even take it because it is illicit, and maybe Skids?
He can take illicit cards level 0, 1 to 5, so Finn can take it.
Okay. But yeah, do you think his Skids would want a card like this?
He'd want a card like this much more than he would want the Chicago typewriter.
I'm building a Skids illicit sawed-off shotgun deck on Arkham DB right now.
Yeah, I do think Skids definitely, for his like high-level weapon, this is probably ideal for him. It's a lower cost, so it keeps his resources higher than if you were to get the Chicago typewriter, and he wants more resources so he can get more actions. And it only takes 1 hand slot, so he can have another weapon or lockpicks in his other hand, so... Yeah, I think it's a good one for Skids for sure, and he can benefit from the Guardian skill cards and combat boosting cards to help him succeed by 2 or more.
Yeah, but I mean if you're just succeeding by 2 or more, you're not really getting the most out of this card. Like, this is a boss killer here.
Oh, clearly, yeah.
You want to be going up against like Silas Marsh or somebody like that, and basically gunning him down in 1 shot. So to get to +8 with skill cards alone is going to be tough.
That's fair.
So I think you'd really need one of those like a Jenny who can pile in the resources, or probably Tony, because he can get resources from his bounties.
Yeah.
In order to pay for this thing, since you're not getting any bonus off the bat.
Is it me, or it looks like Preston is on the artwork?
It's definitely not Preston.
No, that's not Preston.
Why do you say it's definitely not?
I mean, it's illicit traded. He can't even take it.
I know, that's why I was thinking it was interesting. Why do you say it's not Preston?
Because he's got a beard.
Oh, does he? I thought it was blood. Oh, it is a beard. Yeah, you're right. Maybe it's that salesman guy. Does he have a beard?
I was about to say blood, beard, face. You feeling okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing I don't like about Portland are all the hipsters with blood on their face.
Where do you live that you see this?
Same place you live where you see blood for beards.
I don't think I want to go back to Portland now.
I think we need Nate to come back to Port.
Well, when Nate was here, speaking of
I thought he was
blood,
muted.
when Nate was here, he did have some blood. He had a pig's blood ice cream.
Oh, I did. That was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
The other thing worth noting about Sawed-Off Shotgun is it's pretty light on icons for a level 5 card.
Yeah, it only has a combat and agility icon. So you're definitely not, like, you are playing this card if it is in your hand. You
Yeah.
are definitely not committing this to a skill test.
I think the reason for it is it would have probably been too strong if they added too many icons, because it's already a pretty powerful attack at a 3 cost, and it only takes 1 hand slot, which is it's pretty important for most big weapons like that take 2 hand slots or more, like the flamethrower.
Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting. It's definitely a card I want to try out in Tony for sure. I think he and maybe Skids, I think, are the 2 most likely candidates for this card. But let's do a little bit of backtracking, guys. I know we been kind of busy. We chatted with Matt, and we've kind of chatted about some of the player cards released in the previous Mythos packs. But what are some cards that jump out at you guys from Thousand Shapes of Horror? Do you guys have that list handy at all?
I can in like 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. There we go.
I mean, so card that jumps out to me is Swift Reload. Tetsuo Omori is really cool. And I think Otherworld Codex, depending on the campaign you're playing, can be also really good. This to me seems like a TCU card, as you can, it affects like things like Terror in the Night and Fate of All Fools, along with the Hex cards, in addition to like all the witches and the Silver Twilight enemies that you can encounter. And there's like 3 copies of most of those cards in the deck, so I think that Otherworld Codex could be useful in certain builds of either Daisy or Mandy going through that campaign. 2 experiences is kind of a lot to ask for, but I think that card's pretty interesting. Yeah, what are some cards that jump out to you, Man from Lang?
Tetsuo didn't make a very good first impression on me, but since then I can see where he would be very handy in Tommy for sure, because he's the type of ally that you want to kill off very quickly so you can get his item search going, and if Tommy kills him, and he can dump him back into his deck and get an item out of it. That's really good.
He seems too noble for his own good.
What else is there? Like Fool Me Once is similar to the one we just looked at that deals with treacheries, except it just discards it. You just cancel it. It's much cheaper too. Mm-hmm. I played around with Gregory Gree a little bit to see how he was, and he was okay. I don't know if he's better than a lot of the rogue allies that are already out there, but he is nice if you can get him out early enough and you can pass some skill tests. He's nice that you don't have to. You can use him on multiple skill tests each turn, so you can empty him of his resources very quickly, and you don't necessarily have to succeed by 3 every time. Just succeeding by 1 is often enough.
Right, yeah, because you just kind of dump like 1 resource.
But I think in the end, you're only netting about 6 resources. So I tried him with calling in favors to see if you could get him out multiple times per game. But I think he's a little too. I don't think his ability is worth it in the end.
Yeah, I think rogue allies particularly, they have so much competition between Leo Joluka and Lola Santiago that it can feel difficult to try to find space for these other lesser played allies.
Just real quick, Vase, do you have these cards pulled up either in person or on the screen in front of you?
To be honest, I'm reading through them right now to pick my favorite.
Okay, because I'm seeing Brute Force and Versatile. I can't tell, though, in Brute Force if that's a beard or blood on his face. And I'm pretty sure for Versatile, it is blood on his face, but it might be a beard. So if you could help me out, that would be great.
Thank you.
On a serious note, for once, you can timestamp this because it won't happen again. I actually kind of like scrounge for supplies because, especially in a deck that, a starter deck, especially, of course, you're going to have several times you're like, oh, I wish I still had this. I wish I still had look what I found, or maybe you want to get a lucky back or whatever. But to go back in your discard pile and get whatever you need and add it to your hand is a nice, just a nice kind of fail safe or even combo generator.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Scratch Store Supplies is really sweet. It's definitely one of those cards you don't want to see early on in the game.
Oh, and I also should say exactly what it does for our listeners. I apologize. Choose a level 0 card in your discard pile. Add the chosen card to your hand. In case anyone didn't know what that one does, I apologize.
Yeah, and it doesn't cost anything either. So you're essentially trading this card for a card in your discard pile, which is definitely a trade I think you're gonna take more often.
Yeah, and not all the time. I'm not saying it's like uber good, but I have distinctly been like, oh crap, now I really want this one thing to do this, and they're both copies of it are in my discard pile. So now I've got to burn through the rest of my deck if I really need to get to it, like logical reasoning to get rid of something that's in front of somebody that's basically doing them in, or to heal sanity or whatever.
Yeah, and there's there's already a lot of recursion stuff in Survivor too, so it plays around with a lot of that stuff too. This can get back, like you said, like a lucky. It can, it can get off-class assets too, unlike Resourceful, which is cool. So if you're playing like Pete or something, you can get back some of your off-class cards.
And I'm curious, what do you all think of Ethereal Form? And that's the evade, add your willpower value to your skill for this evasion attempt. If you succeed, disengage from each other enemy engaged with you. And for the remainder of the round, your ethereal enemies cannot engage or be engaged with you. You cannot attack or deal damage to enemies. I mean, it definitely gives you that kind of slip away feel. But I don't know if I'm reading too much into it.
I think it's pretty cool. It's cool with Luke because you can use it at a connecting location. And so say if there's like an enemy at a connecting location and you need to investigate that location, you can use this first, like evade the enemy ahead of time and then go into the location and investigate, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, and he can do it with Drawn to the Flame as well. Like any of those that would cause him to be engaged with an enemy. Because he plays events he can play events as though he was engaged. So if you play this one, he can evade all the enemies and then he doesn't have to worry about being engaged with them.
Yeah, it's also nice for multiplayer too, as with Luke, because you can be the seeker that does that.
It's got a cool theme too. I really like the theme.
Am I reading this wrong? I think people might make a mistake with this. You do it, you evade, you go ethereal, and then I think someone might try to like shrivel or do something else, but the very last thing it says is you cannot attack or deal damage to enemies. So that would negate the damage from any, even though it's a magic spell of sorts. I don't think you could do anything else. It's just purely like GTFO or safeguard yourself for just a little bit.
What are you guys' thoughts on? Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that this card is definitely a Luke card. It's also you could play this with other investigators like Akashi or even something like Agnes, who doesn't have a good means of evasion, and you kind of need that one evade per scenario, and this could be like a good option for you.
Blinding Light.
Yeah, everyone plays that, right?
It also buys you time to set up. You could be like, boom, do this spell, evade, go ethereal, and now you can be like shriveling and St. Cuthbert's Key or whatever you're going to put out. You could use that as a round to kind of reorient yourself without having to fear things getting an opportunity of attack or harrying you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point too.
Tactical Nathan.
I don't think I've ever been called that before.
Well, that's the
And it won't happen again. Base. Sending anthrax.
Oh my god.
Have you guys had a chance to play with this other dude from the Rogues, Gregory Gry, the Nutcracker?
The Nutcracker. Yeah, Man from Lang said he had played with him a little
I
bit.
must have missed that.
Yeah, he seems interesting.
Yeah. It's like a What is that? Not All In. What's that other one?
Watch this.
Watch This, right? Yeah.
Did you call the muckraker a nutcracker?
The Nutcracker. Oh, it is.
That's all right. When people can't say things from Panama correctly, I get all flustered. So you're totally good.
Cool. It's a pretty decent set, actually.
Yeah, there's some cool cards.
This is the first time seeing these cards.
But yeah, why don't we go ahead and look at Dark Side of the Moon too? What are some standout cards for you guys? I know we talked a little bit about Practice Makes Perfect when we talked about the Eye of Truth. So that's a neat card. These are these type of like search the top 9 cards are always cards I really find interesting because they're always cards that you kind of keep in the back of your mind, and then a few packs later and there's more targets for them, they become a lot more interesting to build with. Other cards of note, the 35 Winchester is a card I want to like, but I know I probably shouldn't. And the Spectral Razor is sweet. So going off the conversation with Ethereal Form, this is kind of like the fight version, but it can deal 3 damage, which is excellent.
The weird thing is it's the first card that made me think of Magic the Gathering. And there have been a lot of cards that I'm sure are similar, but this one I'm just like, this looks like a Magic the Gathering card to me. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, is it the art? Yeah, I kind of get that
concepts,
feeling too.
yeah.
Cat, she like looks like a planeswalker almost in that art, like specifically. So I totally see what you're getting at there.
Yeah, I think the Winchester, you might be able to do something with it in Diana Stanley if you have some sort of chaos token manipulation, or maybe even since it's level 0, you could try it in Gym.
Yeah.
So you could try to maximize the number of those tokens you're going to pull to maximize the amount of damage you can do. Because it's got lots of ammo, and it does give you the +2 combat bonus as well as +2 damage if you reveal one of those tokens. So if you're able to reveal a bunch of them, then that would work. I really like Safeguard because that's like shortcut for all the Guardians who don't have access to Seeker.
Yeah, Safeguard is cool.
I think you could get a lot of in multiplayer. You could get a lot of use out of that. I like Spectral Razor as well, and of course the Moonstone, which I played with in the Jenny Barnes deck that was using the Scroll of Prophecies to both draw it and discard it, so you could get it into play. The one card I'm not particularly keen on is Sharp Vision. It's probably okay in Min, but I think it's really not great in most survivors. Most survivors have below average to average intellect as it is, so trying to succeed by 2 on a test like that is going to be pretty tough for them. Mm-hmm. Even if you're getting another two icons, like bringing a 2 up to a 4 is not going to get you succeeding by 2 all that often.
Maybe this card by itself.
It is good in Mandy, though.
This card by itself, maybe not the best, but if you combo it with some other ways to boost a little bit, but I see your point.
And Lucid Dreaming, we've seen that before, but I mean, that's good with if you need a second copy of something or one of the Myriad cards. 3 Aces, the ability is really powerful. You get the auto succeed and then 3 cards and 3 resources, but you need all 3 copies to pull it off. So that's not something that you've really got to build around it if you're hoping to trigger that.
But yeah, there's a lot of great cards in the deck. The 2 that I just wanted to mention real quick. Well, first of all, I think there should have been a quote on this upgraded burglary, and it should have been Steal Yourself, spelled Steal, but that's just me. I like Safeguard because I think it gives the opportunity for some interesting shenanigans, moving people around the board and keeping the Guardian next to the Seeker or whoever needs the Guardian close by. I think that's kind of a neat action compression. So No, it's neat when you open a pack and you look at the cards and you're like, I kind of want to play with a lot of these. You don't always get that when you open a pack, and this one has a lot of fun ones.
Yeah, Safeguard is really interesting. So let me ask you a quick rules question while we're on the topic of Safeguard. It lets you move multiple times as long as the...
Hey, Nate, can you read the card out for our listeners?
Absolutely. It is a 2 experience, 2 cost Guardian asset with the talent trait. It has a willpower and an agility icon, and then it has a reaction that says... During another investigator's turn, you can exhaust Safeguard for the remainder of that investigator's turn. As they move from your location to a connecting location, you may move to that location as well.
Keep an eye out for any trouble, she told me. I rolled my eyes. There was always trouble.
Sorry, I had to.
It's a great quote. Yeah, just imagine like some smooth saxophone jazz noir stuff playing in the background.
Maybe Phil Silver.
But
or Duke Silver or whatever the hell his name was from Parks and Rec.
Yeah.